It's certainly more beautiful to be surrounded by mature trees than endless concrete and traffic. But research now also shows it could well be better for both your mental and physical health as well. With us now for more in Chicago, Illinois, Mark Berman. He's a professor of psychology at the University of Chicago, where he is principal investigator at the Environmental Neuroscience Lab. And Mark, welcome back, I should say, to the program. We had you on many years ago when you were up at the University of Toronto, and it's good to see you again. How you doing?
Great, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again, Steve.
Excellent. Now, you have described green spaces as not an amenity, but a necessity. How come?
Well, we've done research showing that having green spaces near the home in your neighborhood is related to better health. It's related to lower crime. It helps to reduce depression. It can help our performance in school. So, these green spaces are not an amenity. They're really critical to successful human functioning.
In fact, I think I've heard you use the expression, if trees die, people die. How do you make that direct link?
Yeah, so there was some interesting work done a few years ago where they were looking at the emerald ash borer bug that killed many ash trees in the Midwest. And what they found is that after this invasive species destroyed many of the ash trees, years later, there were spikes in mortality that they linked to the death of all of these trees. And so, we need these trees for many different reasons. They're directly tied to our health. So yes, if our trees are suffering, our health is also going to suffer.
Now, conversely, when you were back at the University of Toronto, you did a large study, I gather, involving more than 30,000 people. What did you find out from that study?
Yeah, so from that study, we were looking at how different levels of green space in different neighborhoods of Toronto were related to health in Toronto. So we actually had two data sets to quantify green space. One data set had a satellite image that flies over the earth that we could quantify all the tree canopy in the different neighborhoods of Toronto. We also had a really incredible data set from the forestry department at the University of Toronto, where they actually had people go along and catalog all the trees on public land in the city of Toronto. So these were mostly the trees on the easements between the street and the sidewalk. So we had data on all 580,000 trees in the city of Toronto. We knew the species of each tree and the diameter of each tree at breast height, meaning we knew how big the tree was. And from that, we could calculate how much tree canopy every single tree provided. And what we found is that if you increased the amount of trees in every neighborhood by 10, you could significantly reduce stroke, diabetes, and heart disease, and also have people actually feel healthier. And that those effects, if you tried to get that with income alone, you would need to give people thousands of dollars, make them years younger to get those equivalent benefits. So just this modest intervention of having more trees was related to significantly better health.
We are going to get to the whys behind all this in a bit, but still, let's make the case a little further here, because I imagine people can understand how it would have a very therapeutic, positive effect on you if you were to be walking in nature among trees and foliage. Let's see how deep the connection goes. What if you're in a hospital room and all you can do is look out the window and see trees, but not actually walk among them? Does it have the same impact?
Yeah, in fact, it does. And it's a surprising result. And this was a result by Roger Ulrich, where he was looking at a single hospital corridor in a hospital in Philadelphia. And just by kind of random chance, some of the windows out of these hospital rooms had a view of modest nature, some trees or some grass. And some of the rooms on this same hospital corridor had just views of a brick wall or of asphalt. And it turns out the patients who had the views of nature out of their hospital rooms, they recovered from gallbladder surgery a day faster, and they used less pain medications than those patients who had the views of the brick wall or asphalt. And so what's kind of interesting about this is that suggests that there's something about the aesthetic of nature, being able to see it or hear it out of your window, that might lead to these benefits, in addition to trees, cleaning the air, and maybe encouraging people to go out and to exercise.
Now, again, all of this makes a certain amount of common sense, but you go further. Talk about the impact that green spaces can have in actually reducing crime. There's a connection there?
Yeah, so we have theories that one thing that nature might do is help to replenish our attention, so our ability to focus and concentrate, and we think that's related to self-control. And there were some interesting studies looking at public housing projects in the U.S. where they looked at views out of the window in these public housing projects. And like the hospital study, people are just randomly assigned to these different apartments and public housing projects, just like people were randomly assigned to the different hospital rooms. So it's not like healthier people had the views of nature in the hospital room. It's not the case that wealthier or more educated people had the rooms in these public housing facilities that had more nature out of the window. And it turns out people that had the views of nature out of their window, they were less aggressive and there were less reported crimes in public housing projects as a whole that had more nature around them. And we actually followed this work up with some recent data where we had cell phone trace data. It's a little bit creepy, but for 100,000 people in Chicago and 300,000 people in New York City, for a whole month, we knew where they lived and where they traveled for the whole month. And what we found is that when people left their neighborhood and went to go and visit a park, there was less reported crime in their home neighborhood, controlling for age, education, ethnicity, and income, giving some suggestion that if people went out and visited parks more often, that might lead to lower aggression.
Amazing. You've talked about the impact on physical health. What about the impact on mental health of being among foliage?
Yeah, so a similar thing where we also find that walking in nature, being in nature can be beneficial for those people suffering from clinical depression. So we did a study where we sent people out on a walk alone, either a walk in nature or a walk in a busy urban environment. Actually, before they went on the walk, we also sort of encouraged them to think about some kind of problem that was bothering them. And then they came back to the lab. And what we found is when these patients walked in nature, they showed significant improvements in their memory and attention compared to the walk in the urban environment. In fact, these effects were stronger than what we find for people who don't have clinical depression. So I wouldn't want to suggest that interacting with nature might be a replacement for standard forms of depression, such as talk therapy or pharmacological interventions. But I do think it's important to think about nature interventions as being a supplement to those existing therapies, or maybe for people that are having difficulty with those treatments, possibly being prescribed some intervention of interacting with nature more often might be beneficial for clinical depression. And other people have found similar effects for kids with ADHD, or even women who are under great distress, having been diagnosed with breast cancer. That interactions with nature have been very salubrious for them.
Okay, it begs an obvious follow-up here. You say interactions with nature. Are we talking about a 10-minute walk in the park? Are we talking about you got to be in there for 6 hours going on a long trek? What are we talking?
So it depends. We would say that more is better. For our study with participants with depression, it was just a 50-minute walk that led to these immediate benefits. Now, it's not clear how long-lasting those benefits would be, and likely you would need to continue to interact with nature to continue to get the benefits. For the breast cancer patients, it was about interacting with nature about 2 hours a week for about 8 weeks. But you don't have to go to Algonquin Park to get these benefits, although I encourage people to go to Algonquin Park. You know, the kind of nature that we're talking about is your local park where you feel safe, where you can kind of let your mind just be automatically captured by the nature stimulation in the environment.
Okay, we are, I promise people, we are going to get to the why this works. But one more question first of all, and that is, since you have essentially proven that it does work, it presumably makes a great deal of sense for, I don't know, governments, provinces, people, institutions, anybody to go out and plant a lot more trees. Are we in fact doing that?
I think we are to some extent, and there are tree planting programs around, but I think we could do a lot more. For example, I think you could easily try to increase tree canopy in Toronto by 10%. It would cost money. Trees aren't free, and they need to be cared for, so there's a maintenance cost. But like we showed with the health study, you get health benefits. Physical health benefits, mental health benefits. People are more productive. They may cooperate with each other more. People may have greater self-control. So I think when you think at the long term, I think the planting more trees kind of pays for itself. And there I'm just talking about these mental and physical health benefits. There are other benefits of trees, such as providing shade, help with water, getting rid of pollutants in the air. So, I mean, a myriad of benefits.
I mean, this is the classic, the old muffler commercial. You can pay me now or you can pay me later, right? We can solve these problems upstream, or we can wait till they've happened and then try to clean them up downstream. Seems to make sense to take care of it upstream. Okay, let's get to the why. What is the link that you have discovered between more foliage, more trees, and improved physical health, mental health, less crime, better memory, etc.?
So we think a lot of it has to do with attention, and we think that humans have two kinds of attention. So one kind of attention is called directed attention, or sometimes it's called top-down attention. And that's where you as an individual person are deciding what to pay attention to. So presumably you're deciding to pay attention to what I'm saying, but you can really only focus your attention for so long before you become mentally fatigued and you can't do it anymore. And all of us have had that feeling at about 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon after a long work day. You're kind of sitting at your desk and you can't really focus. We say there you're in a directed attention fatigue state, and it's a good time to take a break. That's different from involuntary attention, which is the kind of attention that's automatically captured by interesting stimulation from the environment. So bright lights, loud noises, those things automatically capture our attention, and we don't really have control over it. And we think what happens in nature is that when you interact with nature, you're sort of resting the directed attention, because in most natural environments, you don't have to be too careful or concentrate too hard. But it also has this interesting stimulation to capture our involuntary attention, which then might restore or replenish this precious directed attention resource. And what's interesting too is that we also find you can get these effects from pictures of nature, or watching nature videos, or listening to nature sounds, which suggests to us there's something about the fractalness of nature, the color palette of nature, the sound profile of nature, that maybe our brains just process more fluently, that makes interacting with nature sort of beneficial for our brains and therefore our bodies.
But you've done the testing. You've been in the lab. You've seen how the body, you've seen how the brain reacts to these kinds of stimuli, and you are 100% sure that there is a causal link and effect.
Well, we definitely think there's a causal link and effect between going out in nature and getting these memory and attention benefits. We still have work to do to determine what exactly is changing in the brain. We have some theories, but it's also difficult to do good studies where you can actually have people go out in nature and be able to monitor their brains while they're in nature. Although there is some technology now that's allowing us to actually measure people's brain activity while they're actually out in nature. But we think what's happening is that the nature stimulation might be pushing the brain into these sort of more rested states. And we also are starting to link the features of nature, the fractalness of nature, the curved edge structure that might be causing us to have better attention and to actually even have more reflective thoughts.
So being in nature, in a natural surrounding, actually changes what you think about. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So we find that when we have people walk in nature or actually show them different nature stimulation, they tend to think about thoughts that are more reflective. They even are more spiritual and more about somebody's life journey. Even this is kind of paradoxical, but actually when people are out in nature, they often tend to think about other people more, even though there's often less people around. So we think this is part of the reason why interactions with nature might actually promote more pro-social behavior, because it's actually getting people to think more reflectively, There's a little bit of a sense of awe that nature can kind of provide. And that all leads to sort of caring more about the planet, but also caring more about each other.
You know, this revelation is obviously hugely timely, given how much time everybody spends nowadays with their faces, stuck on a phone. Our attention seems to be hijacked by any number of things, most of which have nothing to do with nature. I guess the question is, how do you get the word out, and to whom do you need to get the word out to make sure? I mean, I presume this is like, do doctors know this? Do schools know this? Do businesses know this? This is stuff people need to know.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is why I'm really thankful that you invited me onto your show. But that is a big element now, is to get the word out, and to also show that this isn't just about intuition, that we're using scientific research to study these things. I mean, the effects didn't have to come out this way. This is how they happen to come out, and they happen to come out in ways that kind of fit with a lot of people's intuitions. One thing that's a little bit counterintuitive about some of our findings is that you don't even have to like the nature interaction to get some of the cognitive benefits. So in the studies where we had people walk in nature, some people walked in June, where it was about 80 degrees Fahrenheit or about 25 degrees Celsius. People loved the walk, and they showed really healthy memory and attention benefits. But we also had people walk in January when it was about, 25 degrees Fahrenheit or -4 Celsius. People did not enjoy the nature walk, but they still showed the same cognitive benefit as the people that walked in June. So to get a lot of these mental benefits, you don't even have to enjoy or like the nature interaction to get the benefit. So I think that's pretty fascinating too.
Agreed.
But I think there's, to get to your larger question, I mean, I think again, it kind of goes back to, we just think nature is pretty and it's nice, and yeah, if we had money, we should pay for it, but it's not a necessity. And I think what our research is saying is actually, no, it is a necessity. We need it to have good human flourishing, and we need it to protect our planet from climate change.
All right, in our last minute here, I'm going to do something incredibly unfair to you, given that you don't live here, you're not from here, you probably aren't even aware of this issue happening, but I'm going to drop you right in the middle of one of the biggest political controversies we've got going right now. And that is, you may remember from your time at U of T, that there is a park down on the waterfront in downtown Toronto called Ontario Place. It was a theme park, amusement park built, I guess, about 50 plus years ago. And it's fallen on hard times. It's been closed down for a very long time. And the current government of Ontario has a plan on how to reinvigorate it. It wants to take the old Ontario Science Centre from Midtown Toronto and kind of rebuild it down at Ontario Place, and at the same time build at Ontario Place a giant privately owned and operated spa, which would be run by a company out of Austria. And I wonder whether you'd be so bold as to give some advice to policymakers, since this is all, at the moment, lines on a chalkboard and not exactly completely thought through. Give them some advice on what they have to make sure they get right about this.
Well, I am familiar with Ontario Place, and it seems like a really nice parcel of land, on the lake. And I guess my advice would be to preserve as much of the green space as you can there and make the green space accessible. So one thing that I didn't mention before, but when we did our study looking at health, green space, and health in Toronto, we found that the trees that were on public land had a stronger effect on health than the trees on private land. And I think that's because we all have more access to the trees on public land. So my recommendation would be, whatever they do, that to think really carefully about not just preserving green space there, but maybe increasing the amount of green space there and making it more accessible to everybody in Toronto to use. I think about High Park in Toronto. It's a fantastic place for restoration. I think you'd want more High Park in Toronto. And so if you could make Ontario Place into another kind of park, like High Park, where a lot of people could access, and having it being right on the lake, I think it would be hugely beneficial to the city of Toronto. So that's what I would encourage policymakers to think about.
We are going to send this interview, Mark, to the Premier of Ontario, to the Minister of Infrastructure for Ontario, to the Minister of Tourism and Culture for Ontario. and make sure that they get your advice. And in the meantime, we are going to express our gratitude that you could find some time to be with us from the University of Chicago today. Thanks so much, Mark Berman.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It was my pleasure.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.